April 1st, 2025, is a date that will forever mark the day the world lost Val Kilmer, a man whose very essence seemed woven from the roles he brought to life. His passing was not merely the loss of an actor, but the quiet closing of a grand, unpredictable epic, one that burned with the intensity of a man who refused to be confined to a single existence. Kilmer was more than his filmography. He was a poet who spoke in gestures and glances, a seeker who chased truth with an almost spiritual fervor, and an artist who treated every performance as if it were his last. His life was a testament to the power of transformation, not just on screen, but in the way he moved through the world, unafraid to bare his soul. "I've lived a magical life," he once said, and indeed he really had. From the swaggering bravado of Iceman in Top Gun to the raw, hypnotic energy of Jim Morrison in The Doors, from the tragic wit of Doc Holliday in Tombstone to the brooding gravity of Batman, Kilmer didn't just inhabit his characters, he surrendered to them, disappearing so completely that the line between actor and role blurred into something transcendent. His performances weren't merely watched, they were felt, lingering long after the credits rolled. Despite all his talent, he did not always receive the recognition he deserved. Critic Roger Ebert wrote, "If there is an award for the most unsung leading man of his generation, Val Kilmer should get it." In movies as different as Real Genius, Top Gun, Top Secret, he has shown a range of characters so convincing that it's likely most people, even now, don't realize they were looking at the same actor. Yet, beyond the glare of Hollywood's spotlight, Kilmer was a man of depth and quiet passion, a thinker, a lover of life's mysteries, a spirit too vast to be contained by fame alone. His legacy is not just in the films he left behind, but in the way he made us believe, in the magic of storytelling, in the power of a life fully lived. But his story did not start in Hollywood. Val Edward Kilmer entered the world on December 31st, 1959. As if the universe itself had timed arrival to serve as both finale and overture. The last day of the decade, the final page of a chapter, yet brimming with the promise of everything to come. Even then, there was something poetic about his beginning. A boy born in the liminal space between eras, destined to spend his life dancing between identities. Val's talent announced itself early, impossible to ignore. At just 17, an age when most teenagers are wrestling with algebra and first loves, Kilmer became the youngest student ever admitted to Juilliard's hallowed drama program at the time. Picture it, a whip-smart kid from Los Angeles, all sharp cheekbones and sharper wit, stepping onto those storied stages not as a wide-eyed aspirant, but as someone who already understood, in his bones, that acting wasn't a profession. It was a calling. But brilliance often walks hand in hand with sorrow. When his younger brother Wesley tragically drowned in a tub during an unexpected epileptic seizure at 15, the loss carved something permanent into Val's spirit. He would later channel that grief into his searing performance in The Salton Sea, where he played a man fractured by loss, not acting the pain but exhaling it, as if every scene were a breath held too long. Yet Kilmer was never one to be defined by darkness. There was always a restlessness to him, a near-obsessive need to not just perform but to become. Lines on a page were never enough. He craved the electric moment when pretense fell away and all that remained was truth. Messy, glorious, and alive. Even then you could see it. Acting wasn't just a career, it was a compulsion. And the proof was in the iconic characters he portrayed. Who could possibly forget Iceman? That cocky half-smirk, the electric rivalry with Maverick that crackled through every scene. Kilmer turned what could have been a one-note antagonist into something unforgettable. The irony? He nearly passed on the role. Yet in his hands, Iceman wasn't just a foil. He was the perfect counterbalance, all sleek confidence and unshakable poise, making arrogance look downright irresistible. It was the performance that launched him into the stratosphere, whether he'd planned it or not. But then came The Doors. Oh, The Doors. To watch Val Kilmer as Jim Morrison was to witness an actor playing a part. It was to see a man possessed. He didn't mimic, he merged. The Lizard King's primal growl, his Dionysian swagger, the way he seemed to vibrate between genius and self-destruction. Kilmer captured it all so completely that even Morrison's own bandmates would later admit they'd closed their eyes during filming and heard Jim. That wasn't performance. That was pure, uncanny magic. And then, Doc Holliday. I'm your Huckleberry. 5 words dripping with fatalistic charm that would echo through pop culture forever. Kilmer's Holliday wasn't just a gunslinger with a cough. He was Shakespearean in his tragedy, Wildian in his wit. Every labored breath, every whiskey-soaked quip, every glint of doomed amusement in his eyes. This wasn't acting. This was resurrection. Even Batman, a role he famously wrestled with, that suffocating suit, those creative differences, bore his unmistakable stamp. He'd later joke that the cape did all the work, but we knew better. His Bruce Wayne pulsed with a coiled, cerebral intensity, a billionaire barely containing his demons beneath a veneer of polish. Others would wear the cowl, but Kilmer made it feel like a burden. Hollywood may have worshipped Val Kilmer the movie star, but those lucky enough to know him cherished Val Kilmer the human being, flawed, brilliant, and endlessly fascinating. He wore fatherhood like a second skin, pouring his whole heart into raising Mercedes and Jack. Friends knew him as that rare soul who could light up a room with a single, perfectly timed quip. His wit as sharp as Doc Holliday's silver tongue. When life grew heavy, he turned not to vices, but to faith, seeking solace in spirituality with the same intensity he brought to his craft. But like many actors before him, he developed a bit of a diva with a bad attitude. Kilmer's reputation for being difficult on set had reportedly exploded into open warfare with the director Joel Schumacher, normally the most temperate of men, who called this leading man's behavior difficult and childish. John Frankenheimer, who directed Kilmer in The Island of Dr. Moreau, was even blunter. "I don't like Val Kilmer," he said. "I don't like his work ethic, and I don't want to be associated with him ever again." The actor responded, "When certain people criticize me for being demanding, I think that's a cover for something they didn't do well. I think they're trying to protect themselves." Yes, he earned a reputation as difficult, but in his mind what studio executives called demanding, Val called devotion. "I believe I'm challenging, not demanding," he'd say with that knowing smile, the same one that could disarm you even as he stood his ground. Behind the Hollywood legend stood a man who loved deeply, questioned constantly, and never stopped searching, whether for the perfect performance or life's deeper meaning. That was the real Val Kilmer. Not the characters he played, but the extraordinary person who played them with such a breathtaking honesty. In 2014, life dealt Val Kilmer its cruelest blow. Cancer stole his voice, that rich, expressive instrument that had brought so many iconic characters to life. Chemotherapy and radiation left him with a tube in his trachea and difficulty breathing. For a man whose very essence thrived on words, on Shakespearean soliloquies, Morrison's poetry, and Holliday's razor-sharp wit, the silence must have been deafening. Added to his troubles was the fact that as a Christian Scientist, Kilmer had mixed views about seeking medical interventions, and at times ascribed physical improvements to the power of prayer rather than medicine. On occasion, he denied he had cancer at all. But true to form, Val didn't bow to fate. He fought with the quiet ferocity of a man who understood that some battles are fought not for victory, but for the dignity of the fight itself. His return in Top Gun, Maverick wasn't merely a professional comeback. It was a profound moment of artistic alchemy. When Iceman, now weathered by time but still radiating quiet strength, signed off to Maverick with those simple, devastating words, "It's time to let go." The line between actor and character dissolved. This wasn't Iceman speaking to Maverick. This was Val, the survivor, the warrior, speaking directly to our souls. In that moment, we saw the essence of the man who had spent a lifetime teaching us how to live. He understood, better than most, that life's beauty lies in its impermanence, that every sunset, every laugh, every quiet moment of connection is precious precisely because it can't last. And through his art, through his struggle, through his unshakable grace, he showed us how to face that truth not with fear, but with open arms. Do we remember him as the chameleon who slipped effortlessly between Shakespearean villains and rock gods? As the artist who transformed his deepest wounds into unforgettable performances? Or simply as the man behind the roles, the devoted father, the loyal friend, the spiritual seeker who never stopped questioning? The answer, of course, is yes. All of this and more. But above all, we remember Val Kilmer as a man who drank life to its dregs, who loved without reservation, who created relentlessly even when fate conspired to mute his voice, who showed us that true artistry isn't about fame or accolades, but about the courage to bare your soul. "I never cultivated fame," he once reflected. "I never cultivated a persona except possibly the desire to be regarded as an actor." But Val were never just an actor. He was a force of nature, a shooting star that blazed across our cultural sky. A man who didn't just play characters, but who reminded us what it means to be gloriously, messily, beautifully human. And that's how we'll remember him. Not with sadness, but with gratitude for the light he left behind. In his films, in his words, in the lives he touched. The curtain may have fallen, but the magic he created, that lives on. A shooting star that blazed across our cultural sky. A man who didn't just play characters, but who reminded us what it means to be gloriously, messily, beautifully human. And that's how we'll remember him. Not with sadness, but with gratitude for the light he left behind. In his films, in his words, in the lives he touched. The curtain may have fallen, but the magic he created, that lives on.